It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. The guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
All right, kia ora, nau mai. Ki ngā Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, he parongo mai e Kingsland, Tamaki Makota, Aotearoa. If you're not from around these ways, that is our indigenous Māori language, Te Reo, and it is Te Reo week here in New Zealand, reviving a language lost through colonisation and a general attitude that prevailed from that, which included discouraging the speaking of the Māori language in fundamental institutions such as schools and then into the wider community. And anyone with a bit of knowledge on how to oppress a culture knows that once you lose something as fundamental as the language, the rest doesn't follow on. So flash from there. My guest, by the way, what I hopefully said, if you are fluent in Reo, I may have sounded like Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite. But I attempted, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast from Kingsland in Auckland, Tamaki Makota, New Zealand, Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. Couldn't find a translation for Kingsland, maybe didn't look far enough, but did sort of somewhat dubiously find that this suburb I live in was sold to settlers, European settlers, for £160. By local iwi Ngāti Whātua. It's actually, this is why things like this language week are good. It's making me think I need to look further into the history of where I've lived for 7 years. My guest today is Tim Batt, a very talented writer, producer, host, etc., etc. Went through radio school, has worked on some great projects from there, a grafter, talent that has worked, as I say, with some good people and in some great spots, but most notably, and he talks about how notable this is in terms of how things changed for him and his co-conspirator fairly quickly after a American film podcast mentioned his podcast. Tim is infamous for being one of the hosts of New Zealand's most successful podcast, The Worst Idea of All Time. Last stats I looked at, I think from a couple of 3 years ago, over 5 million listens. The idea was, if you haven't heard about it before, if you've been living under a rock locally, is they didn't watch Grown Ups, an arguably terrible film. They opted for Grown Ups 2 and watched it 52 times, which is once a week, over a year. Tim was a pleasure to chat to. We got through a lot from childhood through until now. Oh, a wee 5 cents on the conversation. I'd been told that a certain special on Netflix by a stand-up comedian was the one where she quit stand-up. It's the one where she quit stand-up, man. It's the one where she quit stand-up, which was a terribly reductive description of Hannah Gadsby's Nanette on Netflix, which Tim and I discussed, and I dutifully regurgitate said comment about the show. It's stand-up at its core, but it's also kind of a cathartic summation of her life. And go and have a look. I found it quite powerful. I found it very powerful. I have to go and watch it again and take it all on in. But I felt kind of like Peter Griffin in hindsight when I said that in the conversation with Tim. It's the one where she quits. Yeah. I won't keep you too long. I've got a couple more people coming in. I've fallen a little behind, but the students where I work are on break. I'm not on break. I'm marking like a mofo. But they are, which means I don't have a strict timetable, so I've got someone coming in tomorrow night, and I think someone coming in on Friday, so we'll catch up to the 26th for this year. Okay, if you want to support my show, please go on Facebook to Verbal Highs Podcast, on Twitter, Verbal Highs. On iTunes, you can search that up and like And leave a little comment if you want. Not like, sorry. You leave a star rating there, don't you? Don't babble. Thanks to Hallertau. Sent me some beers for the guests this week. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tim Batt.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
Go on, I know you want to. Have one more.
No.
Okay.
You gotta know when to get out.
You got to know what is it? You know when to hold them?
Know when to hold it, know when to fold it.
Yeah. I should have followed that advice a bit more sometimes. So there's water and a coffee. You're on that side.
Beautiful.
I think it's nice to see someone walk in and fully embrace the pinball machine. Just throwing you in here. Are you keen just to go for it?
Mate, we're in it.
Strike me as someone who's got a lot in his diary on a daily basis.
Appearances can be deceiving, guys.
Yes. So the pinball, to answer your questions, it's 2 years old. Pinball, as I said, stopped getting made. I don't know if it completely stopped, but it certainly died out kind of mid-late 90s. And to answer your question, how much it was new. They're nearly 10 grand now.
Holy shit.
But I got that from someone who hadn't played it a lot, and it is what they call in the collector biz HUO, which is home use only.
Right.
And I got it for $8,500.
What makes it a home use only machine versus being in an arcade?
Well, if it's in an arcade, I don't know if people are paranoid, but I think the idea is that if it's not yours, you throw it around a bit more, and
right, so it's a bit more robust.
Well, no, it's just
the ones that are in the arcade. They're a bit heavier.
No. Oh, sorry. I haven't explained that right. No, that's what you put in your second-hand listing to say, hey, it hasn't been in a burger.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha, right.
Yeah, and
so it's the condition. It's nothing to do with the machine. It's the condition of it.
Yeah, but
gotcha.
I think these days, I mean, unless you put it somewhere really dumb, like, I don't know, people don't smoke places. But yeah, I have seen them get thrown around. But to cap it off anyway, it was a big decision because it's such a ridiculously expensive, essentially, toy. But they don't depreciate a lot, so that's my sensible end to all of that.
This is an investment pinball machine, huh, Lewis?
Good
call.
I think I've already had $1,000 worth of use out of it in the last few months. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I just got to play Ghostbusters pinball. Huge Ghostbusters fan, and I'm a pretty big pinball fan. I went to a... Pinball, you're saying that it's sort of dying out. Surely that is just the kind of thing that is due for a resurgence in a big way at the moment. There's kind of nostalgia-based...
It's happened, mate. That's what I'm saying is, there's
non-digital thing we've got a craving for.
That's right. Kids want analog. There's barcades opening around the world now. Wellington's got a sci-fi themed bar that my friend's got a whole lot of new machines in, but Auckland's a funny one. Like, it hasn't really...
Why don't we have a big barcade yet?
Well, I don't know, maybe we should talk business after
We should open one.
Yeah.
I've been to a few in the States and they're awesome. I went to, there's like a pinball, I don't know, it's just a pinball-specific arcade. It's only pinball. I think it's called the Pinball Museum or something.
Oh, in Vegas?
No, it's in New York, in
wow.
Manhattan, and it's just like, it's like a kid in a candy store. Also, I swear some. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Cool.
I think the kids enjoyed that in class as well. I think guests can be more sweary in class than teacher can.
Yeah, definitely. You got to win them over somehow. There's jaded youth. You chuck some effing and jeffing in early on, and they think you're cool.
That's right.
Like, this guy's not a cop.
Yeah. So Tim and I met last week because I now do a class at work called Introduction to Audio Production, and Tim's produced some audio. My guest today is Tim Batt, comedian, writer, presenter, who's behind New Zealand's most successful podcast, and also had a political TV chat show. Is that coming back?
I've heard nothing. We did the season and then I walked out and they went, see you, Tim, and I went, see you guys. Nothing.
The podcast, by the way, is called The Worst Idea of All Time. That's probably important to point out. His words have also been seen and heard on 7 Days, Jono and Ben at 10, the Late Night Big Breakfast, TVNZ's You Late, which I want to ask you a bit about later on, and Radio Hodaki. And he's also produced stuff, or at least a thing, for Comedy Central. This is where I started feeling like I was either on a Russian dating website or shopping for livestock, but his hair is strawberry blonde, his eyes are blue, he's 5'11", 180 centimetres, and his date of birth is 1987.
Where's that bio info coming from?
It looked like some sort
agent?
of actors' website.
Yeah, at Auckland Actors. That's my representation.
87. So you're because you're a pop culture guy essentially. There's 10 years gap between when we were born, or 10 or 11. So you're a 90s kid, right?
Yeah, I was a 90s kid, for sure. Why do you think I love Ghostbusters so much? I was so excited to see the machine in there.
But I'm an 80s kid. That's an 80s.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's true. See, well, we both had the experience, but in a slightly different way. Because for you, it came out at the cinema, and for me, I was a kid, and it was like the movie to get on video. Back
DVD
in the day,
or video?
Absolutely
Okay,
VHS.
good. I don't feel so.
No. See, this is the thing. DVD came in like, it was turn of the millennium, really, wasn't it?
That's
It was
true.
around 2000. Because I'll always tie this to The Matrix. I think of The Matrix as being the first movie that was like a DVD movie. And they fully embraced special features and adding stuff in, and the menus were all animated and cool.
What a perfect sort of, whether it was inadvertent or not, sort of linked to the kind of whole theme of the film and so on.
Absolutely.
So what endured from the 80s? Ghostbusters was Back to the Future kind of. I think the kids are still watching that now.
See, for me, Back to the Future was like on TV.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I've got such specific ways that I
good.
absorb these
This
things.
is why I'm asking.
So for me,
I'm exactly the same.
the Back to the
Dates,
Future
times,
trilogy,
formats.
they're on tally,
Yeah.
and it's for like some holiday. It'll be, I don't know, like a Christmas, family special that they chuck on, so you can wrap the presents and put the kids in front of something. Ghostbusters was very much go down to Video Easy, have a look through, or bloody locals. They weren't even Video Easies like originally. It felt like they were individual
Mum and pop
stores.
Yep.
They were a special thing. We didn't realise it at the time because we didn't know how goddamn fragile they were.
What about sitcoms? So 80s, Taxi.
There's a bit before my time.
Yeah,
before I was tuned into sitcoms.
Yeah, before my time. Cheers, but before your time.
Nah, Cheers I got into in a big way as a kid, weirdly. Except I think that was one of those ones that was maybe on like Prime. Prime seemed to be it was kind of, some people I'm sure considered it a dumping ground, but it actually had some really wonderful, slightly outdated sitcoms on there. Happy Days.
Absolutely.
I think Prime carried that, and then someone weird like TV2 put it on for a while.
Right.
But I watched a bunch of Happy Days when I was growing up. That was like my parents' era almost.
Totally, and it was on. It was same. It had there was a coveted when there was only 3 channels. There was a sort of or 2 channels when I was first growing up. There was a sort of a coveted kind of family 5:30 or 5 p.m. sitcom slot, probably before game shows were on at that time.
Yeah.
So I have huge memories of Happy Days running for what felt like years when I was a kid. Same thing. So it was already
Full
second
House?
generation when it came to me.
Were you a Full House guy?
Full House.
Or was that a bit sort of late?
A bit later. Later. Yeah.
See, I was a kid for Full House. I think that was right in the pocket for me.
How's how the Olsen twins turned out? How do you?
I like how weird they've gotten. Isn't one of them with a billionaire, some eccentric billionaire dude, and one of them was like dating a race driver? But it's their sister, whose name escapes me, who's in a big central part of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, is Scarlet Witch.
The sister of the twins.
Yeah. What's her name? Olsen. I've forgotten her name, but she's the sister of the
younger sister,
Ashley, Kate, and Mary. Yeah, Mary, Kate, and Ashley. That's it. Mary, Kate, and Ashley.
Thingy's eye popping out, which
do you want to know something about that?
Never actually aired.
Yeah. Which I got told by Jeremy Wells.
Yeah.
Because I produced his radio show for a little while when he first came over to Radio Hauraki. And we talked about this once. Because he used to bring, I probably shouldn't say this, but he'd bring, this was just on the weekend show, but it was Saturday morning from 10 a.m. till noon with Steve Simpson, who's a fantastic man. Who they met at BFM, I think, and they were doing shows over there, and they came over when Matt Heath shifted over. So I was helping them out producing that when they first came over, and Jeremy Wells would bring a bottle of Patron, and we'd pretty much finish it every
Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
shift. Yeah,
would he come in from the night before, or would there be some sleep?
No,
okay.
He's
sensible.
He looks like a very clean living dude. He's a very good looking man. Looks after his skin. He works out and stuff, but the dude knows how to party.
He's famous for smoking Marlboro Reds on TV through much of the late 90s. Anyway, back to Thingy's eye.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. So he revealed this. Yeah, God, this will happen. So you're going to have to pull me back.
Yeah, that's right. You might have to do the same.
So we got to talking about that scene at some point, and he said, it never aired on television, and all of these people come up to me telling me about like where they were when they saw it, because it was in the intro for Eating Media Lunch, which was his show, and it never happened.
Public, and I went down an internet wormhole after learning that of like people. A lot of people, if you put them on a stand, they don't think they're lying.
Totally,
it's about. It's how
a
memory
Berenstein's
works.
Bears scenario
Right.
where people fully, but like they truly believe they saw it on the telly on the Jason Gunn show, and it was on like some weird tape on a blooper reel, I think, and then maybe it got picked up by blooper shows, but it was never something you saw as a kid.
Aired. But it was your generation had it have aired, right? Thingy.
Yeah, because that was Jason Gunn, who was a big fixture of my.
Because mine's Fenella Barfield's boob.
Fenella Barfield. I don't even know who that is. It sounds like a made-up princess name.
Fenella. She was kind of a made-up princess when you were in your early teens, Tim.
Was this your sexual awakening?
She hosted. That was probably Alyssa Milano. Then when I went back and watched Who's the Boss, I felt like I should be locked up. Fenella Barfield hosted 3:45 Live, which is kind of your afternoon get home from school show. Later turned into the Bugs Bunny show.
Yeah, with Fiona Anderson. So that's the version I remember.
Pleasing to the eye. Her breast popped out.
Ah.
Now, if you ask a lot of people these days, akin to Thingy's eye, they'll say, yeah, I remember when I saw that on the show. Didn't actually happen on the show. Happened at a public event she was at. The Truth, our smutty little rag.
A reputable newspaper of yore.
Picked it up, and probably of the era. I don't think her career went very far after that.
That's a damn shame. Well, it's just a bloody body part becoming visible briefly at a...
Would
at
that kill off your career these days?
No, you could get your dick out for sure. I'll tell you what, there's a lot more cameras now.
Yeah.
But I think there's... Well, what kind of party was it? I think that's the real question.
It wasn't one of those kind of
parties.
If
the Queen is here, and it's at sort of government house or something, and it's quite highfalutin, I think a rogue breast might cause a bit of a stir, but I don't think it should end anyone's career.
I mean, that's right. People engineer these things these days, and our attitude to kind of nudity and so on, and just the pornification of culture's changed things anyway. You grew up in Wellington, didn't you? I learned that today.
I was born and raised in Christchurch, but I did all my high schooling in Wellington, so we moved when I was 11.
What's the moving? Dad's like an army guy or something like that, or
it was Dad, but he's not in the army.
Okay, I just guessed. Terrible guess. It's not Wairuru.
Both my folks work in education, and my dad got a job at Welltech as the head of School of Engineering. So his background is motor mechanics and cars.
So
he's a big car guy.
Have you got any of that kind of practical hand-eye?
Absolutely none. It's quite hilarious. There's 4 of us kids, and I think one of us has a driver's license.
Wow.
And my dad, he used to race karts. He, at one time, held an international racing license. Like, he's been fixing up cars since he was about 15.
So is he like, where did all these fruity kids come from, or has he got a good attitude towards it?
He's got a great attitude.
It can go two ways.
He is a deeply accepting man.
But he's got a funny bone? Where's
grateful.
the funny bone in the family from?
Both sides.
Yeah.
My dad is... his family's British, so he shifted over on a boat when he was 11 over to New Zealand from Reading. And I think it'd be safe to say my grandma on my paternal side, like, she was a fucking hoot. She had a sensational sense of humour.
Excellent.
So and quite naughty. So I think I got quite a bit from her. My mum is very funny as well, and she, on her side, it's a lot of Irish Catholic.
Right.
So a lot of that sort of... I don't know, what do you call it? It's quite dark. Can be quite a dark sort of gallows humour.
Yeah.
You got to get through the potato famine somehow.
Yeah.
Sort of sense of humour.
And the church.
Yeah, exactly.
And so...
But that whole thing with Catholicism, that we're all sinners, it's probably a bad way to run a religion, but it is kind of a great equaliser, a little bit.
It's deeply ironic now.
Yeah.
So you're not a man of the church, I take it?
No. I used to... When I was a teenager, I think I was... typical sort of bratty atheist, but I think I see a lot more value in religion than most of my peers.
I see value. Totally see. God, this could be an hour-long conversation. But
religion, yes or no?
Stonerish, as Thomas Watts would call these delves off into these sort of topics. So, no, I absolutely do. And I'm preaching to the choir when I say this to most people. But it's more, it's that corruption of large-scale, powerful organisations, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Where religion. Back to where you grew up. Was it mainly Wellington?
Yes.
What
I'd say I'm a
suburb?
Wellington boy. I'll put it that way.
What suburb?
I went to Onslow College, so I was round by Jayville Way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Onslow, good school?
Onslow was a great school. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. There's two. It might have changed now, but there were two options in Wellington if you were sort of a liberal artsy leaning student:
Go on.
Onslow or Wellington High.
I went to the other one.
You went to Wellington High.
Absolutely.
There we go. And Wellington, they both had a reputation for drugs.
Yeah, that's
for
right.
sure.
You'd hear, I bet people smoke pot in the classroom.
Absolutely.
It's like, what
you hear a
fucking
lot
load
of shit, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
But they actually cleared, just before I came in, they had a real clearing of the house, as I understand it. Maybe it's hard to separate out the urban legend bits of this
That's
from
right,
the truth,
yeah.
but apparently they kicked about 4 or 5 kids out who were dealing.
Yeah.
Police came in and they had a big thing. And then we got a new principal, so maybe lend some credence to that.
We had a great principal for the period I was there, sort of almost. I went back to the school reunion. I was one of only 2 people from the 90s that went, but she was almost a Helen Clark type figure. It struck me in the best possible ways. And then they had a change. I think they had a bit of an identity crisis for a while. But yeah, great schools. So we both dodged the wearing a uniform bullet. We both dodged the
single sex.
Yeah, single sex. So, I mean, I don't want to knock a whole lot of people's schooling because people really love those environments, but that seems such a weird setup of an environment, eh? Like, not so much the wearing a uniform, but the kind of being all cooped in one category.
I think it depends on what you want to get out of school.
Yeah.
I think at the time it makes life for potentially everyone a lot easier, but longer term I don't think it's that helpful. And by that I mean it's a little bit easier to administer from the teacher's point of view. I think when you're a kid growing up, maybe it's a little bit easier being in a single-sex school. Perhaps you avoid all of the myriad dramas that come with co-ed life. But but then again, this is speaking from a very specific vantage point. And like if you were a closeted gay guy growing up, in particularly like the 90s or early 2000s, in a single-sex or boys school,
I don't remember.
It'd be a fucking nightmare,
I've thought about that. I mean, there were the people that were obviously gay that turned out to have same-sex partners. But having said that, none of them that I remember would ever have had a boyfriend or a girlfriend if they were a lesbian at that time. But I think that might have changed now, eh?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot more acceptance. And I actually think, talking to a few people getting this very anecdotally, one of whom is my wife who's a doctor, but I think the sort of trans experience in high schools is a lot more visible now as well. There's a lot more trans students, and it seems like the Onslows and Wellington Highs of New Zealand are really accepting and supporting those students.
So Onslow, what kind of kid were you, bro? Were you
what kind of kid was I?
the funny bone there then? Smoking weed in the class like everyone did at Onslow.
Do you know what? I used to listen to Bomber on Channel Z, and he. I have to say, he's turned into something of a kook these days, unfortunately, old Martin Bradbury.
Yeah, sometimes when I go, I'm left-wing, I look at Bomber, I go, I'm not left-wing.
I just think he's
psychiatric wing?
I respect the crew here. Well, I don't know, there's political spectrum and then there's like man yelling into the void. You know what I mean? It's like you can argue that Whale Oil is really right-wing, but you go on his Twitter and it's just like 15 tweets every hour and nothing's been retweeted or liked. It's just a man shouting into the void.
Old man yells at cloud.
Exactly. So, it's an X and a Y, on the X-axis on the graph we've got political spectrum left to right, but then the Y is like sanity. At any rate, the one thing I remember from Bomber growing up on the late night youth talkback show that he ran on Channel Z, which was, if you ask anyone around my age, everyone listened to it, and it was quite an amazing formative thing.
Yeah.
And nothing before or since has come around like it. It was quite an amazing thing.
Yeah.
He would always stress the fact that your brain's developing until you're at least 18, weed will mess with that. And I really took that to heart. So I tried weed, but I didn't smoke weed properly.
I was joking. You didn't pick me as that kind of...
No, but I had friends who smoked weed in high school. Like it wouldn't have been a crazy, possibility. Yeah. Some of my best friends are high school stoners.
So anyway, Tim, you got a bit funny about the question. What kind of kid were you at high school? Did you have the funny bone there? Were you the drama guy?
Yeah, I was a drama guy for sure. I'd like to think I was a bit funny. I was sort of... Our high school wasn't uber cliquey. There was definitely people who were like your sports guys, and I wasn't one of those.
No.
But I tried to sort of, mix and mingle and be mates with everyone.
What sports?
We had a rubbish rugby team.
Yeah.
We weren't bad at
the
soccer.
one problem with Wellington High and Onslow.
My God,
we had obscure, our female water polo team smashed it, which is great. But
to
it's
each
like...
their own, you got to claim something. We had a cricket team, which I was briefly part of. I don't even know the rules of cricket now, but it was called Onslow's Drunken 11. I think we were sort of like the 6th 11 down the list. And we managed to get on... what is it? News Talk ZB. Do they have they've got a sports... They had a sports station... What is
Radio
it?
Sport.
Radio Sport. We managed to get on that for breaking a record in sort of like high school collegial sport for the lowest amount of runs scored. And we used to do stuff like, one of the rules was you weren't allowed on the pitch unless you brought a duz with you. And I remember one game, our captain was really good at cricket, Billy Roberts. He was sensational. And he bowled an apple.
Good on you for working against those Onslow stereotypes we just talked about that don't exist.
There's an element of truth in all of those things. Yeah. He bowled an apple instead of a ball when we were playing against Boys High, and it scared the shit out of the guy when it smashed on the bat. It's very funny.
I'd love it also if it was those schools where sports just everything, just the disrespect of bowling an apple.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's
this
important.
Is cricket.
There's no, I think, greater depiction of the two schools, Wellington Boys High and Onslow, than that scene of a kid from Boys High earnestly coming up to the pitch, ready to absolutely stomp these bloody liberal pinko a-holes from Johnsonville, and some dude who's half cut bowling an apple.
From old wacky backy smoking Onslow.
Exactly.
So you leave school.
Yeah,
Are you one of those? Because this is simplification, but it's sort of like, are you going to uni? Are you not going to uni?
I was absolutely going to go to uni, and then I didn't. I was actually going to go after sixth form. Now, my parents and I have different remembrances of how this went down, but my version of events is at the end of sixth form, I actually got all my ducks in a row. So I had the requisite grades. You needed to get a pretty high score in NCEA to get you a university entrance in sixth form.
Still called bursary? A bursary?
It had just changed.
Okay.
I was sort of first generation up.
That's fine. Keep going.
And I got a letter of recommendation from the principal and all of that. It was all good. And then my parents were like, nah, stay and do seventh form. It's a good year. And so I did, and I just got so fucking mind-numbingly bored that I was like, screw learning stuff.
No, fair enough. It's really interesting hearing different people's experiences. Went and got a job. So did part of seventh form, and what did you go and do?
I did all the seventh form. Finished seventh form.
I thought you were going to say your parents remembered your eye popping out or something, but that wasn't the different. So you finished.
It was my version of a breast coming out.
So you finished school.
Worked at Inland Revenue for about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And then went
Yeah. Right.
Was it that long? I think it was.
What were you
it was
doing?
a couple of years. Worked in the call centre to start with, and then worked at the complaints department.
Wow. You worked almost like post-traumatic stress disorder kind of roles.
I really dug it. Particularly the second one was very full on because I was 19.
Yeah.
And dealing with you don't deal with anyone either who's got a stupid quandary, because that's usually been headed off at the pass of the call centre.
Yeah.
Or anyone who's particularly happy to talk to you.
No.
So that confluence of someone with a good case and a lot of anger coming at you for tax matters is pretty full on when you're 19.
Hindsight, probably good for building diplomacy and sort of like...
100%. I got so much out of that job.
Yeah, man, right.
A lot
in terms of, if you're going to be like the sort of things you're doing now, you're the person and the business all in one. There's probably a lot of things you learnt there in terms of how to handle.
Hell yeah. And good process as well. Just like keeping everything transparent and writing everything down and just all those little things that can help out later. No, it was good. It was a good job, but I was glad to leave it as well. So then went to Sydney for 6 months. A mate went over there to pursue a girl.
Nice.
He was like, Tim, you want to come? I was like, shit, yeah. I want to see how this turns
the
out.
wingman for the thing that had already happened.
It was so good.
Sydney, fun.
So that was cool.
And so what, not doing any open mics or anything at this stage? Obviously, comedy is in your bones from your nan and stuff, but you still haven't sort of...
I did.
No theatre continuing on from school?
I wrote a play when I was in 7th form because I was so bored to keep me there. So I wrote a play, the only play I've ever written, called The New Adventures of Hercules in Johnsonville. Right. And it was about Hercules and Hera and Zeus moving to Jayville because Zeus sees Lord of the Rings and falls in love with the landscape. So he wants to come to New Zealand, but he lands in suburban Wellington, and it's just about the three of them having a hard time. So
was it performed anywhere?
Yeah, we put it on.
Nice. Where?
At the school, just at the school in the drama department, and enlisted the help of many faculty and students.
Did you work in Sydney?
Yeah, Telstra.
Yeah,
you got to pay the bills, mate.
Oh, look, when I lived in Melbourne 6-7 years, and Australia, look, even call centre, hospital, it's all lucrative. You finish the week and you've got all this extra money after you've paid for everything. You know?
Then you're
so different.
I never cracked into how to do this, but all my mates said all that money that they put away for your retirement, you can get that out if you say you're never coming back.
You can do that now. You can get it put into your KiwiSaver. I did it, but unfortunately the number of dodgy hospital places I worked for, a lot of them hadn't been paying for it.
Right.
But you'd be surprised, bro. You probably got a little bit sitting there. There's actually a thing called Oz Fund or something where you just type your name in and they search through every...
I got to do that.
You got to do it, man. Just get it all put in one place.
Worked at Telstra there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I learned from that job? So that is the biggest telecom in Australia, and I from memory, it's had the same trajectory as Spark had here, where it was the state-owned telecommunications provider, and then got privatised.
Yeah.
If you look into any industry or job or like big kind of system, everything is only just working on planet Earth. Like
humans.
Everything is teetering just on the brink. I was terrified in that place because my job was the technicians were out in the field. They'd switch stuff around on the exchanges and they'd ring us to do the programming, to reprogram the exchanges so the right signals.
So you're sort of dealing with the equivalent of chorus here these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got 40-year-old systems talking to something that's just been installed and trying to patchwork up all of these different systems. It was fucking terrifying. And no one understands how it all works. Everyone only knows how to make their bit do the job, but no one actually has any underlying understanding.
So what is that? Just big organisations and information flow and stuff like that?
I think it's a human thing to, as long as the thing is working, to not look any further into it.
Fuck, 9 to 5, I go home, I've got spare money at the end of the week, I'm in Australia.
But
I've got a pool in my backyard, I've got shrimps on the barbie.
We've built really complicated systems and they're all, in my mind, just teetering on the brink.
Well, there's information flow and also, I guess, people justifying roles with teetering systems and stuff. So did you say at the end of your 6 months, please tell me you did, I'm leaving because...
I want to go to radio school.
Oh, okay, I thought you said because humans can't do anything together and these systems are failing. And...
No, I don't care too much. Work was work, you'd switch that off.
So what year did you go to radio school?
2000 this is good. I went to radio school in the first half of 2008, and I remember them saying radio's a bloody hard industry. It's really hard to get a job in there. So realistically, of the 30 of you starting out here, there's only going to be a few of you who are going to be able to get jobs.
They said that at the beginning.
Off the bat. Yep.
Goodness.
Yep.
I mean, guess good on them. But yeah, anyway.
So we did this course with that hanging over our heads, and then the global financial crisis happened midway through the year. It was like, oh, fuck.
But you did, to your credit, go into work pretty soon after that, right?
Immediately.
And I think you were dux of radio school, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I don't know where that's published.
I put feelers out before these shows.
That's weird. Narrowly beat out a couple of people. There was only 3 of us really vying for that top spot in the class. We were all mates, Anna and Sean and I. And
Which one? Okay, so there was Wellington. I think that one's gone now. So Christchurch.
No, Wellington's still there.
Wellington's
It's
still
joined up with Whitireia now, but
Oh,
they
of
used
course,
to be
of course.
independent, the New Zealand Radio Training School.
Because Auckland Whitireia up the top of Queen Street has a radio school now as well. So is that the one you did?
I think it was the same outfit. So I trained in Wellington.
Yeah,
I did
great.
the Wellington one.
Great. So back
Street.
on, always nice to sort of study and stuff back at home, I reckon, eh?
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that in a sec. 'Cause I want to talk about your early days in radio. But what do you think? I'm just asking out of interest because I teach some papers in and around radio at work, but I'm not sort of in the pointy end of the radio manger. And I was thinking the other day with this podcast course and stuff, do you think these radio sort of schools might be better calling themselves like maybe radio and audio or something like that these days?
Potentially.
With our, with what we're sitting here doing these days?
I
Yeah.
think you actually get those things anyway, so it's sort of a matter of call it what you want, but the skills you learn in radio are pretty applicable to like podcasting.
Absolutely. I'm not knocking the major at all. I'm more sorry, I didn't really qualify that properly. I just get this feeling from 18-year-olds these days that it's like radio.
Yeah.
Maybe a parent going, "Oh, that's a dying industry," even though it's not. You
Totally.
know?
Radio's so weird because newspapers, television, demonstrably, you can see that stuff on the wane and has been for a long time.
Yeah.
And everyone has been anticipating the demise of radio for like 30
Cockroacha.
years.
Yeah.
Since the MP3 player
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah.
Or maybe since the fucking cassette tape came
Yeah.
out, you know?
Well, yeah.
And it just has never happened. And even now the industry, in terms of like revenue and not eyeballs, ears, I guess you call it, listenership,
Yeah, he is
really strong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's sort of inextricable.
Yeah.
But it's quite a nimble medium. Like, you don't need
It's a
ton
smell.
of money.
I was going to say, relatively to other media, it's the smell of an oily rag medium.
Yeah, it is.
It's what keeps going when everything else cuts out.
And it's
arguably
super personality driven. It's more
Yeah.
personality driven than television is. So in some ways, I think radio, despite it being an older medium, has kind of it's sort of done a loop around TV in some ways, because now with podcasts we're learning that the importance of that whole kind of intimacy relationship between a host and the audience. And radio sort of always had that by accident the whole time.
And people are, the figures show, even if it's older people generally with podcasts, whatever you define as older, the listeners and stuff, people are embracing it wholeheartedly, man. And also, the other thing with that is the whole, like, we live in that sound cult kind of, sort of like soundbite snippet media culture these days.
Yeah.
And so these, to me, like what we're doing now, someone listening at the other end, it's sort of like slow cooking. It's like going back to slow media.
Absolutely.
Did you, I don't know if you heard in the last New Zealand on Air, is it New Zealand on Air that commission it? Something like that. They do a big state of broadcasting and media every few years. Their big reports just come out.
Oh, right. No, I haven't.
And just coming back to what you were saying, it's actually the first time, they've talked about what's going to be the impact of Netflix and streaming and torrenting and da-da-da-da-da. It's the first time they've really noticed in the curve, and it's 45-year-old plus.
Mm-hmm.
Below that, broadcast TV's just suddenly
gone
flying down,
It
right?
had to happen at some point, didn't it? It's fine. It's kind of my parents' generation, and it's funny because I've had a personal experience of watching this in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Have finally discovered Netflix and on demand.
Yeah.
And it's literally like, it's changed the game.
How's
completely.
this for a habit story? I'd go over to my folks' place, and they'd both complain about how bad broadcast TV's got, but it would still be on while we're all sitting there talking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the first thing was like, why don't you turn it off?
Yeah.
And then the next thing was like taking over keys of content. Got my mum to start watching the whole series.
Nice.
Then her partner was a bit like, it's illegal.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like, get Netflix. I don't know, it costs, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys used to get videos for $10 a night.
And half of them are paying for Sky.
It's $12 a month.
My folks didn't watch a lot of telly because it had all gone to pot, but they're paying for Sky.
Right.
Sky's so expensive.
Well, that's the next thing to go, isn't it?
And so
that guy's, resigned. Yeah.
Yeah, we just... So, obviously, 4 of us kids, so we're able to sort of pull money. So, we got mum a new cell phone, and we got them a new TV and a sound bar. And the TV's a smart telly, so it hooks up to Netflix, and we got them like 6 months of Netflix or something, and it's just changed the game. So
totally.
they can watch actually what they want to watch.
Bro, I go over there now, and this little bit that's been lost, it's like the media version of sleeping in different beds. He's on his headphones. And
What have you done?
Because they've got completely different tastes.
Yeah.
And, Netflix, the whole algorithm's like,
Yeah.
it's just pulling them apart.
Yeah, right.
But bringing them together.
But now that was the thing with, it's kind of, that's why everyone's gone away from broadcast television, I
Yeah.
think, because it tried to be, and it had to be all things to all people,
so
which
difficult.
just makes a real milquetoast product.
And often lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Because, if you're in blob out mode, totally. The last thing I'll say on radio that I tell my students is that, even a screenwriting school worth its salt these days will still get you to do something similar, at least to a radio drama, at the beginning of your writing course.
Right.
Because that whole theatre of the mind, just audio thing is such, compelling storytelling, right?
Yeah.
You got out of radio school, you produced for Matt on Hodaki for a while, Matt Heath. I mean, that's a good gig, or was that a wee while after?
There was a wee while after the first, the first job I got in radio. This was straight after I graduated. Was at Solid Gold, which is now The Sound.
Yeah.
For Kevin Black, who has passed away since.
So you worked for a legend.
An absolute legend, like a true legend.
Legend off here too, nice guy.
Absolutely,
Right.
A really wonderful, wonderful guy. He was. It was. It sounds like hyperbole or cliche, but you genuinely couldn't have asked for a better introduction into radio. This is a guy who had.
You were aware of the
Done it.
provenance of Kevin Black?
Not
when you got on
really.
air? Oh, good.
Not
That's probably a good way to go in.
Yeah. And I mean, I really did get thrown in the deep end. Like, it was a nationwide network breakfast show, and breakfast is the most popular spot. So, and I hadn't had any experience paneling properly before. So I fucked a lot of stuff up in the first couple of weeks.
Explain paneling to my broad and varied listenership.
So you might have seen on television or movies in a either like a sound recording studio or in particular a radio studio, there's a big desk in front of the operator, and sometimes it's the DJ talking, but oftentimes, especially if it's a big show, they'll have a producer who just pushes the buttons and does the dials.
Yeah.
And that's called paneling.
Yeah.
And so that was my job for Kev. And you're making everything run. So you're making songs play, ads run, you're making sure everything's on time, which is the most critical bit. You're bringing in weather reports that have been recorded from other bits of the
So
country.
that expression, baptism by fire.
Yeah.
Do well?
After the first 2 weeks, I was all right. Luckily, I'm a bit of a nerd, so
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of kind of hardware and technology, and I quite like understanding how that stuff works.
Yeah, essential.
But I've balls it. I got chewed out a little bit from my boss back in the day.
But someone
from
must
listening
have,
stuff.
you must present well in interviews or whatever, because to go from, normally you'd panel on, midnight till dawn or something. So,
Yeah, I don't quite know how that happened.
Oh, good on you, bro.
But it was-
I read
it was
a
good.
weird thing today that was of a phenomena in New Zealand I did not know had even existed, and you haven't mentioned it. Did you work for some radio station in Wellington that existed? Because it's so hard to get a commercial license these days. So you worked for a station that was trying to be ZM.
Yeah,
That,
sort of.
yeah,
It
go
was
on.
more like, what was it trying to be?
Was it a clusterfuck of a weird thing to be involved with? Or
It was
did
so cool.
Okay, yeah, go on.
X105 is the name of the station. So I worked at Solid Gold back when it existed, and then obviously the global financial crisis, because this is only 2009, so it had been rolling up the country. So we were getting pulled in for these office meetings from it wasn't the CEO, but someone pretty high up in MediaWorks, because in Auckland all the radio stations are out of just two buildings, so we'd all get hauled in sort of once every couple of weeks or once a month or something. They'd give us a state of the nation. They'd say, look, we've let some people go in Invercargill, but don't worry, it won't get to Auckland. Look, we've let some people go in Christchurch, but don't worry, it's not getting to Auckland. Look, we've let
like
some
The
people
Walking
go in
Dead.
Wellington, but don't worry, it's not coming to Auckland. And then lo and behold, whole bunch of people got the arse in Auckland, including us.
Yeah.
So our whole show, AJ Wetton, who's a former All Black, he was the sort of co-host with Blackie, and all of us, DBK, who was our newsreader, we all got the arse at the same time. And it didn't really matter for us but for Kevin, it was, it was a pretty big deal. The guy had been working in radio for decades, like his whole life, and he'd been at Solid Gold from memory, about 12 years.
Man, it's cold.
And I don't think it was dealt with, as these things are, not particularly well.
Yeah, big corporation.
At any rate, got made redundant there and immediately got snapped up by this outfit that was just starting up called X105, which was Ian Stables, which very few people remember. He's still around, I shouldn't say that.
Shock jock who's not working at the moment.
He is. He's in the mountains. He runs this little network called Ski FM in Owakuni. He's a man who's... he's super dynamic broadcaster.
Polarizing.
Both polarizing and polarized. He has bipolar. And he has struggled with that over the years.
Didn't even realise I said that.
I think he's got a better handle on it now.
Jokes about mental health. Anyway, so I'm taking your track here.
This was my experience. Yeah. So they brought me in to produce for him. Stables insisted on paneling, which did my head in because I wanted to have my fingers on the button sort of thing. I was so used to that. And it was wild. There was how many? Sort of 10 of us. Almost all of us were under 24 years old.
With this old sort of shock jock wizard.
Old shock jock wizard and John O'Max, who was most of our radio tutor from radio school.
Right.
And a few other disparate parts who come from other bits of the country. And it was just this amazing thing we were trying to run on no money.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, well, this isn't a good public point of comparison, but TVNZU. It's just I love projects that are, hey, we don't have enough money to do this thing, but we've got a lot of passion.
That kind of punk DIY. It's held together by gaffer tape.
Exactly. Yeah. I fucking love that stuff. And even in it, even though, you always look back with rose-tinted glasses, I think in it I knew that I was having a lot of fun. But it's unsustainable, completely unsustainable.
I had a role in a station with next to no budget where I was the most creative in a paid role I have ever been. And it's because to do the breakfast show and justify that role without budget, I also talked my way into making the ads. Not only engineering them, but writing the scripts and inevitably voicing half of them.
You learn so much, eh?
I recently got a whole lot of that stuff on a DAT tape.
Yeah.
Bless it. Found a player. And I was listening to it from the late 90s. I was like, this was my own work. But I was like, these ads are they're almost kind of works of art. I can't believe I was doing so much with so little. You really
so I get it. I get it. Of. Yeah.
So, brief history lesson for people who don't know radio. I mean, it's a bit of an oversimplification, but in New Zealand, owing to the two companies that Tim talked about, it's basically regulation by industry now instead of government. So it's very hard to get a frequency that will throw a decent amount of kilometres. Hence why low power radios everywhere. How did they get a frickin' high power license in that era? It's so unusual. Doesn't matter if you don't know. That's just my nerd coming out.
There was something about it being hooked into iwi stuff.
Yeah.
Debs, who was the manager, she did a lot of stuff with iwi radio across the country.
Yeah.
Setting up different stations and helping people get to know how to run them. And there had been some arrangement, I think, through that vehicle because there's special dispensations in the law.
What happened with George
that.
FM?
Yeah, exactly.
Willie Jackson and Thane Kirby ended up with a dance music station,
which is why there's before dawn a ton of te reo that you hear on there.
I love it on what they call it's a sort of an EDM commercial dance music station now. At the middle of the night when it should be doot doot doot. It's like traditional waiata.
Yeah. It's quite a cool thing though. It's sort of I don't know. It fits oddly.
I think it's a little. Perhaps a little corrupt, but anyway.
I won't dwell on this for too long, but just that whole experience of being X105 was so cool because it's like you say, the creativity that comes out of we don't have any resources, what can we do?
Yeah.
You think of the craziest shit.
Absolutely.
I used to do this segment called...
I love this stuff.
Fuck, what was it called? I can't remember.
So you were on air too?
I was on it. Yeah. I was co-hosting with Stables in the afternoons, and I would go on my cell phone and jump into a service station somewhere around Wellington into the ice. The bags of ice thing out the front that keeps them cold into the freezer. So I would jump in a random one of those and we'd say, right, Tim's in the freezer. If you can find which service station forecourt he's in, you win the prizes. So I had some movie tickets or something in me. So I was sitting in a freezer on my cell phone for half an hour, just waiting for someone to... I was doing crosses back to the station. How's it going in the freezer? And I'd be in... Featherston Street or something in a BP freezer.
Did it ever get touch and go, or someone would find you
absolutely.
on time? Okay,
because half of the whole bit was me going the blow by blow,
going into
of
pneumonia, into
stealth.
like, what do you call it? When you're
Getting into the freezer.
no, what do you call it when your body starts to fail?
Right, hypothermia.
Yeah, slipping into
Luckily, they were never as cold as you think. I used to heat the ice up more than it would cool me down. But it was about me watching the workers and finding out when I had my chance to quickly dash in and jump into the freezer without them seeing me. It was cool.
And it just sort of like, it's weird. You had a commerce and industry and climate based, again, baptism by fire early in your radio career, because you with this legend Blackie, and then they tell you guys you're gone, and then you this whip new upstart in Wellington, and then they just ran out of money, I'm guessing.
Stables was a legend as well. Like, he worked at ZM and The Edge.
They just ran out of money?
Really well known. Yeah, ran out of money.
Yeah.
The sales
A year or
team never
two.
quite got its shit together before a year was up. I think we had sort of 11 months.
Well, again, quick business lesson, everyone. It's really hard to get your shit together. I'd imagine when, like, again, it's also controlled these days. There's a big organisation called the TRB, and if you're not in line with, they sell all the advertising for MediaWorks, and if you're not in line with them, very difficult.
Our sales team wasn't run super duper
Right.
well. I feel like, with hindsight, being a cynical 31-year-old, I look back at that now and I go, yeah, that was pretty fucking. You need to square up your revenue.
Yeah. Fridays at radio, when the drinks started, even in the 2000s, the drinks started at 1 in the afternoon. The sales team were finishing. Yeah. TVNZU, from memory, 2011 or 12. I remember watching it going, man, I haven't seen anything this interesting on local TV in ages. Because, like you're saying, it was just, let's say a bunch of kids, but it was a bunch of young people, a bunch of people in their mid-20s, smell of an oily rag. It was like, to me, it was like student radio with pictures.
Exactly what it was.
And you were involved, right, bro? You weren't one of the main hosts.
Tangentially, I was a segment on someone's show. Like, I wasn't one of the main guys.
And I realised that. So it was just the toilet review.
It was the Lou review.
Yeah.
I would come in and do every Monday night on Guy Montgomery's show that he did with Tim Lambourne, You Late, which is how I got to know Guy Montgomery.
In a dangerously 80s suit with a thin tie.
Although that suit became less and less as we built this whole character arc where I had basically become homeless. So every week I come in with one less item of clothing, and I think I turned up in a garbage bag by the end of it.
As part of that bit that by the end, instead of reviewing them as someone who needs to relieve themselves, you're reviewing them as somewhere that you're staying in?
Absolutely.
Hey!
Very much so, yeah. There was like an accommodation sort of slant to it by the end. But it was such...
But they are your contemporaries in terms of like where Rose has gone recently, and like those people
yeah, absolutely,
who were involved with that couple of years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was actually quoted recently in a spin-off article, which was a big retrospective on TVNZU,
which was really good. I read it this morning. Yeah,
it was really cool. It made me quite nostalgic for it, actually.
Yeah.
But I was quoted in there, probably not wisely, because I do a bit of work for TVNZ, saying that it was the single stupidest decision ever made in television in this country
to stop it or to start it.
To stop it.
Yeah,
because it cost them so little money. Like, all the hosts were getting nothing. They were a bunch of like 21-year-olds who were just happy to have a camera pointed at them. They were getting so much out of it, and meanwhile TVNZ was building this amazing stable of
we just talked about what's happening with broadcast TV and young people, right?
You look at any one of the people who was involved on TVNZU and where they're at now.
Yeah,
Rose just won the top
award at the
biggest comedy festival on planet Earth.
And if she embraces that, correct, like I'm not saying this to you. I'm asking. I'm assuming that is an international career if she wants it.
She's kind of got one now, to be honest. Like, I don't think, but yes,
but I'm
right.
meaning like, right. We start to play big venues.
Totally.
If you get the right representation and...
For example, Rose is she's doing super well, and not everyone in New Zealand will know that yet, but she lives in London, and she is both doing increasingly acting and comedy stuff and writing for TV.
So you think she's going to end up a film star as well?
Well, she's got half a film degree. She's always had quite an affinity.
A film
for
degree is
so.
a little different to being a star in
But she's
large.
always had that.
I have a film degree. Okay,
She's always had that affinity for cinema.
Yeah.
Her knowledge of cinema is crazy.
I got my film degree with Taika and it was theatre and film with Taika and Jermaine. So I suppose there's a
must hurt a little bit.
66% grain of truth to that, Tim.
You can't help but have a little pang of jealousy looking back at that, eh?
Yeah, that's right. She had a stage at the Capping Review. Oh, but Taika was always going to be a star. Onslow boy, Tim. Onslow
I didn't know
boy.
that.
Taika, come on.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, absolute. You know, people. You hear, as another guest said on the podcast a while back. You know, Taika was always a star, even at high school.
I remember his 48-hour film competition movie that he did, where it was just him, one-man team, and he did a war movie, and he just had a fixed cam, and he was like jumping over his couch and stuff. He won one of the top prizes.
Isn't that character kind of revived with his dad and boy? Isn't there some sort of
Shit,
jumping around
right.
military kind of like? I seem to recall a scene of like, you know.
Yeah, you might be right. Actually, it might be kind of the same.
Yeah, I know you. Things always are. It's building on the same idea. So Rose has got a film degree, and she's won the biggest comedy.
She's got half a film degree.
She's got half.
She
Okay,
never finished it.
Okay, she's got half a film degree.
But my point is that
She's won the biggest.
She's doing fantastically well, and she is a star and will continue to be a bigger star. The award that she's just won, for context, is like the award that. Oh fuck! That's so bad. I've forgotten her name. What's the woman's name who did Nanette? That huge special on Netflix that's just come out, which has changed the world.
Not the one where she quits halfway through. No.
Oh,
Not
God.
the woman that was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
I'm going to Google that.
Yeah, go on, you do that. I might have a game. I might have a game of pinball while you.
My meta point was that TVNZ was silly for pulling the plug, and all of the presenters on that network on You have gone on to do great things.
I wonder what,
and will continue to.
What? And all they did was do a +2 of another channel. Anyway, we won't flog that horse. So Tim's just looking for the name of someone who's recently changed the world with a Netflix special. A Netflix special.
Yeah, Hannah Gadsby. I can't believe
I
forgot her name. I should get 40 lashes for that. It's incredible. If you haven't seen it, by the way, you got to watch it.
Oh no, that's good intel, because there's a lot of with that Netflix special phenomena where they're actually not really special anymore because they're just coming all the time. There's actually a lot of pretty average ones on there, bro. Some of them I get a few minutes in, I go, oh, this is just frat boy kind of like.
This is you could accuse it of a lot of things. Average is not one of them.
What's that? Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
My wife said, who I think's got quite good taste. When it finished, she said that might.
Was that intentional?
Yes, it was. She said that might be the best thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
It's very of the moment, very zeitgeisty.
So tell me, give me the name.
It's called Nanette, Nanette.
There's another reason. This is because I mentioned it. I'll follow through now. There's another sort of meta or sort of questioning stand-up special that's been talked about recently. An Australian woman who quit partway through the special.
Sorry, that is Nanette.
Yeah, that is Nanette.
She kind of discusses.
I thought it sounded familiar. Yeah, okay.
That's Hannah Gadsby.
Okay, because the thing I've got with some of those specials, and it's so funny, relates to podcasts totally, is my listeners are sick of hearing this. They know the hosts I listen to, and they get a lot of stand-ups in for obvious reasons because they're stand-ups as well. So I have these favourite guests where I'll go back and listen to multiple episodes from Comic A. And then I watch their stand-up and I go, your stand-up isn't actually really that amazing, but you're a great orator,
I don't know, stand-up's tricky old business, Lewis.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
sorry,
a tricky old business.
I'm sort of like, you kind of know what I mean, eh?
I'm not offended by it at all. Don't.
I'm not ragging stand-up.
But it's just one of those things where, stand-up is a real dark art, and it depends.
And it's a taste thing.
What you want to do with it. It's such a taste thing.
It is a taste thing. I'm going to finish it off really quickly because I realise what I'm meaning is. I listen to a lot of Rogan. I know you think he's quite douchey. So he has a lot of...
I kind of love him. But I also think he's douchey.
You said to the kid in my class that really wanted to do something Rogan-like.
Yeah.
Well...
I said
we
Rogan's
all know he's a bit of a douche, bro.
I also said I like him in the same sentence. You're forgetting that bit.
Anyway, so he has a lot of comedians on. I really like what they have to say. They're fun, fly on the wall listens and stuff. But to be more diplomatic, I watch their specials, and it's, as I say, the only way I can describe it is it's kind of frat boy stuff that it's not the craft that I like to kind of,
Well, It's almost
Shut up, nerd.
Nah, it almost harks back to what we were talking about with broadcast television. Is that to crack a room of people up who are all coming from, different places?
Yeah.
There is a little bit of lowest common denominator. You do.
Yeah.
You can't go for the pinnacle of something you think is really kind of intellectual, funny, or uber specific to you.
I don't need really intellectual. No,
You have to dumb it down in some way so that everyone is on board with your premise and your joke. So
Then we meet,
we've all got
and now you
different
don't
ways.
realise who we meet in the middle with Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Bill Burr, the insanely well crafted,
Well, for us,
incredible comedian
As-
who's also the everyman.
well, as two straight white cis dudes, then yeah.
Yeah, that's
but
right,
like
yeah.
but Bill Burr's probably not going to be the great uniter between me and some other friends.
Well,
of mine,
these
you know?
guys that I just talked about are even far less going to be based.
Yeah,
Bert Kreischer, lovely guy on podcast. That special's like,
Is that he's the guy who does that story, The Machine, where he goes to Russia?
that's
Is
right.
that him?
That's
Yeah.
a good story.
Fuck, that's good.
Yeah.
So I used to read
Performs with his shirt off, and he was in a Rolling Stone article in 1997 for being the hardest partying student in America.
He had a relationship, and I don't know if it was personal or just kind of they occupied the same cultural space at the same time. But do you know who Tucker Max is?
No.
So Tucker Max is now talk about this guy's a fucking douche. His book is called. It was something about him saying he's an asshole. He was this amazing writer who had a website, and it was one of the earlier-ish kind of blog websites about his exploits as a drunken frat boy. And
Yeah.
it was just the stories were so outlandish and the writing was so good that I used to fucking love them.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I'm kind of like...
Yeah, not good
God.
for your aforementioned cis.
Man, I tell you what, my wokeness has taken taken a hammer to it by aligning with Tucker Max.
So yeah.
But it's more kind of like the quality of the comedy writing. Fuck, I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, he's funny.
You were saying he was a douche, and we were talking about Bert Kreischer and hard party frat boys from the 90s.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I've got an affinity for those dudes, though. Like Van Wilder, for some reason, I fucking loved that movie.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager.
There's a generation gap. I'll write that down too.
That is Ryan Reynolds' sort of original claim to fame.
I love this.
It's a terrible film.
This diary here, because I come back to it, after a few weeks, and I go, Nanette, Rosemary, Van Wilder,
That's art. That's poetry.
P.T. Holmes, Allspice. Well, that's obviously the shopping list for later on. So I just wanted to ask, and I wanted to sort of premise this with, if you felt like you feel like you've spoken about the machinations of New Zealand's most successful podcast too many times, we can leave it. But I am curious.
Leave it so many
I'm just
times.
worried that I'm going to ask all the same questions you've been asked before.
Nah, man.
You come up with an idea to watch Grown Ups 2. Had you podcasted before? How did you decide on the film? What was the general process?
So for those who don't know, I don't know, will you put a little intro on this? Or
No, you tell me.
I co-created with Guy Montgomery a podcast called The Worst Idea of All Time, where we watched and reviewed Grown Ups 2 every week for a year.
Yeah.
Just that same movie over and over again. And
Weekly. 52 views.
52 times.
Yeah.
And so how did we come up with it? We were I was coming in doing that segment on TVNZU reviewing public toilets on
Yeah.
his show, and then the channel got canned, and we decided we wanted to keep working together. So we came up with this idea for the podcast.
Yeah.
And we just started doing it. I hadn't done a podcast before.
Were you even a listener, or?
Yeah, I was a little
Okay.
bit, but it was very early on. But it was one of those things where, because I'm kind of a nerd, I was like, man, this doesn't look that hard.
And you're a radio school graduate.
I was a radio school graduate. I know how the internet works a little bit. I know how recording equipment works a little bit. So I can kind of bluff the rest. I can learn the rest pretty quickly. So we just did it, and that was a real key to the show, I think, is that we came up with the idea. I distinctly remember this, and Guy said, when do you want to kick off? And I said, tomorrow. Come around tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
And we just did it.
Yeah.
And the first episodes are, the sound quality is fucking terrible, because we're just sharing a mic, and it's all set up wrong. But one for the history books. So, we just started doing it, and we we're kind of just doing it for our mates, and they thought it was kind of funny. And then we got into, it wasn't even that late on. It was sort of in the early 20s, week 20-something. And
I mean, that's halfway through. It's a fair way, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah.
I might be remembering this slightly wrong, but then there's one of the original bad movie review podcasts is called How Did This Get Made?
Yeah,
by
great
Paul
podcast.
Scheer,
Yeah.
Diane Rayfield, who's his wife, and Jason Zukas. And so Paul does these like in between episodes where he talks about what's coming up next and shares a bit of fan mail. And he shared that some fan on the forums, on the Airwolf forums, had found out about our podcast, Worst Idea of All Time, and just like name checked. He was like, so there are he said there are some Australian comedians watching Grown Ups 2 every week. I don't know how that's going to go. It sounds pretty weird. It's called The Worst Idea of All Time. And our numbers off the back of that tiny little mention just went
Isn't
through
that,
the roof.
To me, that's just a tale of... It's like a fucking beautiful cliche of everything about how new media works.
Absolutely.
A fan, a listener,
Yes.
posted in
On
a
a forum.
forum,
Yes.
which an American podcast,
Yes.
Not in the world of American broadcasting,
Exactly.
picked up on,
Yeah.
gave one shout out,
Yeah.
and then you went to Google Analytics in your flat in Grey Lynn or wherever you were and went,
Exactly.
holy shit.
And so...
Did you even know what to do with that, like intuitively, when
Well,
your numbers
what do you
went?
do with that? You just keep going. You
Right,
just keep going,
okay.
and you bring people with you. Off
So
the
you
back
just
of
just
that-
kept going, knowing your numbers had gone gangbusters. Just kept going. Didn't approach any, I don't know, sponsor or.
I think we did have a spot. We did. We did. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a business brain just from the IRD stuff. So we got some people on board later, but we weren't getting any serious. It was a few $100 here or there.
Yeah.
For some stuff.
Shouts to Hellertow.
Off the back. Do they sponsor this?
He sends beer every now and again.
Oh, okay. Well, there's not one here. I might add.
I would have given you one, but it's
No, I quite like
it's
Hallertau,
5 to
so.
12.
Then we got an interview with Vice.com off the back of that kind of
Great.
uptick.
Yeah,
And then that
yeah,
pushed
yeah.
us up again. So that's kind of how we got everyone. That's how we got our
Yeah.
audience.
So
Those two events.
wow. So someone after the post, it's mentioned there once, and then it's mentioned, and then it's the whole like grapevine in the States or wherever. So someone who's writing for Vice is obviously one of the people who heard it from someone else who did it.
Yeah, one of those tastemakery people that's always on the lookout. And then so think about this. The start of the podcast, which we kick off in February 2014, is we just come up with this idea because we want to hang out and do something together after my mate's channel gets cancelled.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of that season, we fucking fly over to America.
Yeah, this bit blows my mind.
We get put up in Cinefamily, which has since closed, but they were this legendary, like, the cinema that it had such this amazing community around it, and it was the place that, Robert Downing Jr. would bring all his arty films to and do the screenings.
Is this a theatre?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge historic theatre.
Yeah.
It used to be a silent movie theatre. They had chucked a ton of money into it, revamped it, and it was run almost as a trust.
Yeah.
And it was these incredibly passionate people about movies. So this guy, Brett, who worked there at the time, found out about us, and he was so lovely. He was like, look, come on over. We'll do what we can to, make it all work financially, rah, rah, rah. And we sold out this huge historic LA theatre.
Wow.
Just with this goofy fucking idea we had.
Yeah.
And we did this, we wrote as a fundraiser to get
a
us over
postcard
there.
to the CEO of TVNZ, No, anyway.
We wrote a script. We tried to write Grown Ups 2 from memory
Yeah.
because we'd seen it like 50 times.
boy, yeah.
And we put on a fundraiser in the Grey Lynn Town Hall, community centre, with a whole bunch of comedians like Rose Matafeo and a whole bunch of people reading all these parts to get us some money to go over there. And then we used that script and we did it over in Los Angeles. And it was like Busy Phillips and Melanie Linsky and Jason Ritter and like all of these super famous, awesome comedy actors, and we're just up on stage reading our goofy fucking script.
It's amazing, man.
And that was in 1 year. This was crazy.
And so that person, I'm always interested in the mechanics of how all this works. It's even just for relaying to students and so on. But so he for that first opportunity to go to the States, because I know you've been back since off the back of even tangentially that podcast. He found you and said, "Hey, look, I'll pay you guys over here and we'll make this event work."
Yeah, he didn't. he basically said...
Sorry, don't worry about the financial thing so much.
Yeah.
I'm more meaning...
he reached
you
out.
did not have someone representing you. He reached out to you guys.
Correct.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Just a guy from the theatre. He went, "You guys are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
We want to have a live event
Yeah.
at our place." And we were like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah, and that weird
Amazing.
that weird accent had been paved by the Flight of the Conchords. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of, I think it all. I do think it all.
Oh, 100%.
It all relates. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We owe... Everyone in New Zealand really owes a lot who's doing anything in Los Angeles to Peter Jackson and to the Flight of the Conchords, to Reese and Jermaine and Brett.
Wellington, mate. Wellington, mate. Went down to Wellington for one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, which included going, fucking hell, Brett McKenzie is on stage with the Muppets. Back to the show, I wanted to ask, because obviously everyone would know who listened, there's a bit of theatre in it. There's a bit of theatre in everything that is, broadcast or performed. There's an element of theatre to us now when the mics were going off, da-da-da-da-da-da. But I thought about it when I was listening to you guys through that. I haven't got through all of them yet. But I was like...
That's fine. There's about 1,000 hours
No, there's
of
52. No, there's
podcasting.
52. There's 52 for that. There's 52 episodes, isn't there? And then there's bonus ones and live ones and stuff like that.
Well, there's 3 seasons of 52, and then there's all this other weird
I'm just
shit
just
done in
give
between.
me,
But anyway,
give me time
sorry.
here, mate. There's a lot of podcasts. But were there genuinely moments where it did your head in, like 52 of anything, like, or was it just fun because you were doing it with a mate?
No,
No.
it was legitimately painful, especially the second season. The second season, because we did...
Because it was Sex in the City
Sex
2,
in the
wasn't it?
City 2.
Yeah. Was that the worst film of the two, was it?
a contender for the worst film I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen it 52 times.
Yeah.
And it's 2 hours 40 long.
Yeah.
Like, it's
2 hours 40.
painful. Yeah.
So someone made a terrible
220
decision in the
maybe,
cutting
actually.
room.
225.
So someone had such little vision that, I suppose you've talked about all of this, someone had such little vision that they didn't even think about editing a turd down to a smaller turd.
We often talked about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What you are seeing on screen is every frame that they had shot.
yeah.
Because we dug through the production a little bit as well, and we know that those ladies did not get on very well through
Yeah.
the production of that
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
Everyone had fallen out with Sarah Jessica Parker because she was getting so much more money because she was both an EP and a producer. And maybe kind of co-writery.
It's such a shame. I just realised all the stuff I'm going to say is like probably things that have come up, but it's a shame. It's like reboot. It's like doing a Seinfeld film later on. It's whatever. It's like just leave it. Sex and it was a good show when it was on.
A great, important show.
Yeah.
Television show.
So it's just
No
this
piece of
fucking
garbage.
just leave it alone.
If there was
So I know-
$10 million sitting on a kitchen table, Lewis, you're going to grab it, aren't you?
I am.
That's
right.
what the Sex and the City movies are.
Yeah. So I know, look, I don't want to minimise the fact you've been a grafter for years, but it sounds like it's been quite a life and career changing.
The podcast?
Yeah, am I
Absolutely.
over
Nah, not
selling
at all.
that? Yeah, because you are still in contact with organisations in the States and doing different projects.
There's
What's going on at the moment, bro?
There's kind of secret stuff going on, to be honest, that I wish I could talk about, but I can't.
Okay.
And it's often the way that it'll amount to nothing anyway. But hopefully some of the stuff that we're talking to people about at the moment will eventuate.
But you produced a show for Comedy Central that got picked up by Comedy Central. That's an Australian comedian who came here.
No experience necessary.
Yeah.
Ray Badrin is the comic's name. He's based in London now, but he's an Aussie comic. He's a fucking lunatic, and I love him to bits. Sensationally funny. But he came up with this idea that he wanted to kind of make his own sitcom.
Yeah.
And so the show's quite meta because the meat of it is us running auditions and putting genuine actors in front of the camera and throwing really fucking wacky stuff at them.
Yeah.
And capturing that whole process. So it's like Ray interacting with these legitimate actors who have come in, think they're auditioning for a part, and it's this fucked comedy series that we're shooting around that process. But then at the end of the season, there's the actual sitcom that gets made, and like Guy Montgomery's in it, and Rose is in the series, and Guy Montgomery is in it throughout, but Guy Williams is in the last episode, and we built a whole sitcom set, and
in New Zealand with an Australian comedian.
Yeah, it was shot in
but
Auckland.
a American network picked it up, or is it there Australia now?
Comedy Central Australia, and we made it for like no money. It's a web, it's a web thing, so the quality's not, it's not high fidelity stuff. But again, it's Henry Stone it's a lot of his DNA. He directed it and co-wrote it with Ray, and Henry Stone. If you want an Instagram presence to follow, Henry Stone.
Never heard of him. I'll write that down too. I'll put
He goes through these
I'll
phases.
I'll put that below anchovies and bleach and disinfectant. Henry Stone.
Henry Stone goes through these phases of his online social persona, and at the moment he's in the yummy phase, so he calls himself Yummy Henry.
Is he Australian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's just a sensation.
I've got to embrace the Instagram thing. I just don't take enough photos.
You can just hang out on it.
Is that how it works? I don't take enough photos.
Instagram's the devil, though, because
Facebook's taken a lot of my life, bro.
it's the definition of just scrolling through nothing.
You're
eh?
a big Twitter guy, eh? It's funny what we embrace. Like I just embraced Facebook, and
I fucking hate Facebook now.
Yeah.
I used to be a big. I genuinely don't use it very much at all.
I
now.
need, I got to jump on it all, especially for things like this. With that, man, like two things that dawned on me. The first one didn't bother me. I kind of already knew it, but when you talked about the other day, when you came into class, it really crystallized for me that I don't have a global idea with this in terms of this ever doing that. It can't. It's local people in a country with a small population, yeah? Whereas your idea was quite universal. Having said that, it dawned on me that I'm being a little bit ridiculous with my expectations in terms of promo. Like, I kind of just throw it up on Facebook. I've built a website and kind of that's it. Like, what do you guys do to promote? Because for listeners who don't know, you've got a podcast sort of network now as well. What's your philosophy on getting the content out there?
To
every single fucking thing, SoundCloud, YouTube.
I genuinely want to head this question off at the pass. I am the wrong person to ask because I do a terrible job at this.
Okay, so have you got someone in your company who does it for you?
Nah, it just does. I'm very bad at running shit. Like the network is something I need to put a lot more time and attention into.
So that's what I kind of figured with respect is that I think that the podcast network is not your main project at the moment, eh?
Nah,
it was something you were quite big into the idea of a couple of years ago.
Well, I still really, I'm into the idea of it. It's a lot of work, but it's also just like wrangling everyone. And the thing that's occupied most of this year for me is a combination of the comedy festivals, which carved out maybe 3 months. But the main thing has been making this TV show. Well, it's a web series technically of the male gaze, which took a lot of time and energy and mainly
when's
focus.
that being released?
That's out.
That's out.
Okay. Yeah, that's just come out recently, so that's on TVNZ.
I can put that on the list as well. The male gaze.
Yeah,
and you're politically minded as well because you decided to host a panel show. Yeah, that's right. Didn't realise the significance of that till I moved away, all the public servants and so on, and that sort of climate. But wonder if it's similar to Washington. So you got a panel show off the ground last year talking to people about current affairs and so on, didn't you?
Yeah, it's quite funny.
On Duke kind of TVNZ's, I guess, cock and ball station.
Well, yeah, it is and it isn't. They when they launched, Duke it's a male targeted network, and they had the worst fucking advertising campaign launch that I've ever seen, and it rightly got a lot of flack for being a dick and balls.
It actually
launch.
was.
It was. I can't even remember specifically what it was.
I remember, sort of like a bikini chick bouncing on a trampoline kind of style.
It was almost to that level. It was very laddish, and it got resoundingly panned. And I don't think it's ever kind of shaken off that initial launch.
Yeah.
But they've really tried to. They had Samantha Bee. They carried her show.
That wasn't where I was coming from. I was just.
But at any rate,
I was just colouring that versus Bravo, and that's what stations do. Anyway, so you did this chat show. How'd that go?
Did a chat show. So it was the brainchild of a guy called Ed Kendrick. And
shout-outs to Ed.
So a lot of people think that I went to Duke with this idea for a show and wanted to do this thing. Yeah. It's not at all how they came up with this format, and they were like, "Hey Tim, do you want to host this thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Okay. So then we did. We did it. 18 episodes, I think. No, less than that, maybe. 16.
Enjoy it.
It's quite a lot. I did.
I think panel shows look fun to do. The ones I like, I really like. Never mind the Buzzcocks. I could go on. They're fun. Panel shows that work are really fun.
Yeah, I am generally my worst enemy or my harshest critic, and I was never very happy with what we made, and I just got very frustrated, and we had very little resource going into it. I don't think it was it was neither the show that they wanted necessarily or they had envisaged early on, nor was it the show necessarily that I quite wanted to make. It was something in the middle, which neither of us.
That's interesting. So, just briefly, what are you meaning there? Like they wanted it to be
They wanted it to be the Daily Show, I think.
Yeah, and you wanted it to be...
Well, I would love to make a daily show, but the thing people don't realise about
There's
that
a huge team and a budget.
There's
and
writers.
There's
There's literally like 25 people working full time to make the Daily Show.
How about this for the first thing? Even though you're an orator, a comedian, you're a smart guy, like all of those hosts are, did you have a writer for you?
No.
Exactly.
No,
so
I didn't
people don't realise they have a whole table
It was
of
honestly-
showrunners coming up with one
Yeah.
killer joke and one killer joke and one killer joke,
Yeah.
and there's your monologue.
Exactly.
It's a lot of...
putting together segments and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was literally me and a guy called John who produced the show, and that's it. That was the team.
Got any jokes today, John?
He was too busy booking guests and doing paperwork and all the bullshit. Like,
What do you think of this, John?
he was too busy literally booking out camera operators from the news team.
A politician walks into
get
the
that night.
parliament and,
All of our lighting, our sound, everything was borrowed from other shows and departments. We're in a studio that it was just this old abandoned studio downstairs. Yeah. It was very put together.
We'll put it in Avalon.
That being said, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
The thing I liked the most about it is that it was live, and it was actually live.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Thanks for reminding me, because that's a bit of a unicorn these days on TV.
Yes.
Sort of terrifying and exciting at the same time.
Everyone kept coming up to me, including people at TVNZ, being like, "Oh, you freaked out about being live." I was like, "Nah, man," because I've done radio before, so I've kind of got a sense of that.
Yeah.
But
then on radio,
like you
can kind of scramble if things are going wrong and
well,
whatever.
you kick off a song if it all collapses.
Yeah.
But nah, it was good fun. I mean, I learned a lot. I'd do it a bit differently were I to do it again. But I mean, we did some really cool stuff. We had Jacinda Ardern, I think, on the first episode.
Yeah.
And this is before she even was the leader of the Labour Party.
She was smart doing that. I noticed at a number of places, like just embracing all of these things that your typical politician wouldn't do, and I think it really paid off for her, And I saw and heard her on a lot of things.
The
that
difference...
were like, oh, this is my world. That's out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the difference with Jacinda is that it wasn't... an outreach program. It wasn't something that political
I realised when I was saying that it
consultant-
sounded cynical.
No,
yeah.
but some politicians do.
No,
they
but
do a lot of coverage, and they don't really want to be
Part of
there.
it was, bro, and I've thought about this a few times, is like someone sort of who actually genuinely feels like they're from vaguely my generation and my world is running the country, and it's out of it. Like, I know people who know Jacinda, like that, because New Zealand's a small place.
Yeah.
But, agreed. Like, she did stuff like, I heard her on, I don't know if you ever heard of How Not to Be an Arsehole. It was Tourette's the rapper and Louis Nux. They're not a duo that one would expect an aspiring PM to go on their show. Their show was great. It was about not being an arsehole.
Do you know
and
why,
it was just
though?
kicking shit and
Jacinda
stuff.
fucking loves Tourette's.
Yeah, I love him too. I had him in. That's an odd one. With Dominic. Dominic talked about neoliberalism and how it had really destroyed the country. And in my intro, he took what I'd said the wrong way and never shared it. It's never really replied. It's a weird stories coming out about this podcast. The one where he was one of the biggest heroes I've had on the show.
Yeah.
And he thinks I was in full agreement with Rogernomics and so on based on my intro. And I went back and listened to it after he said all that, and I was like, I don't want to hit him up again about it, or I'll sound like a psycho and stuff. But I'm like, no, I was just throwing ideas around with like the way the country was and where it went. Anyway, so
Never met your heroes, Lois.
There's my Elliot story. Not my Elliot story, sorry. My Dominic story. Supremely talented guy. One sec, bro. I got one other thing. And... oh no, there's so many windows open. We had such flow on. It was doing so well. That's right. In my dealings with you, before getting you to come and chat to my students at Auckland University of Technology, which they loved, you said you're on your honeymoon.
Yeah.
Where'd you meet your wife? I'm not normally romantic, but just what I was on his honeymoon.
It was such a romantic meeting. We moved into a flat.
Yeah.
And that was it. We were literally moved in across the hall from each other into a flat in Grey Lane.
Wow. Oh, that's so
that's
cool.
how we met.
That's so cool.
Sorry, it's not a better story.
You know what's beautiful about that? That just hit when you said that at 1 hour and 20 minutes and 6 seconds. So I think we are done. How do you feel about that?
That's great.
You can play some more people.
It seems like such a low point to end on.
Well, no, the other before that, and I'm going to leave all of this in. I always do. Is the bit where I finally didn't have a question to retort with after 80 minutes of us going.
Can I throw something at you to end on, which I think is a better ending?
Okay, bro, go on.
And I'll make this as brief as possible. This is a story I haven't told anyone, actually.
Okay,
this is exclusive for you. But we were talking about Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah.
I don't think she'd mind me saying this. So Jacinda and I have been friendly for like years. We've been sort of just broadcasty things. I'd had her in on Hauraki, I think, interview her a couple times back in the day. And before it all started, ramping really into the election year and cycle, we actually had a little sit down and coffee because she really wanted to do a podcast. Jacinda wanted to do this podcast where she talked to people who were really passionate about random shit.
That's so cool. That's
so
right.
like the person running the country now, this was something she wanted to do. She's probably a bit busy now. I think.
She's probably a bit busy now. I'm trying to get her in. It's like when I tried to have James Shaw in because I went to uni with him, and then when I realised he was going to be leader, I'm like, well, I don't think I'm talking to James anymore on Twitter.
Why not? He'd do it.
I think they've. I think they've got to be. I think it's just a reality that they've got to be careful, man. And like your team around you is not going to agree to go sit with a dude for 80 minutes and talk unedited.
Probably not 80, but no, I think you're being too. I think give them more credit than that. Actually,
it's not James. It's the political machine. I remember James really fondly.
There's very little machine there, honestly, and I think they're a party, and I think even Labour's moving more in this direction that recognise they have to open their politicians up a little bit more. That's how we all absorb. You've got
to listen to that Obama Mark Maron episode. It's stunning.
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard that.
I've listened to it more than once.
Where he says the M word. It was like I remember listening to it and I was like, wow, this feels historic.
Are we going to go for another 80 minutes?
No, we're done. Hey, but Lewis, it's been a pleasure, man.
That's great. Play some pinball and head on off into the media world.
Catch you out there, everyone. See you online.